One big issue that we have down here, and I spoke to Jeremy on with the Van Forst Park Association, is at the pedestrian mall. The pedestrian mall, a lot of people come in and they park in Van Forst Park, they park around the neighborhood, and some of them come, they're inebriated, they, hit our cars, et cetera, et cetera. Does the city plan on having some parking for these people that come in to our neighborhoods and take our parking spaces, or also present a danger to us?
It goes back to kind of an enforcement issue and kind of ultimately, let me take a step back even further. Simple answer is, does the city have a plan to create a parking place for them to park? The answer is no. Okay, we're not creating parking decks right now in the downtown area. We don't have space to do that right now. And it goes back to what I said earlier, is that our plan is ultimately not to encourage people to be driving into Jersey City for that sort of thing. Building a parking deck that services 200, 300, 400 people ultimately encourages 200, 300, 400 people driving from outside to come to Jersey City. It opens up a whole nother set of questions. That was ultimately built for Jersey City residents and close to the path, intentionally. And there's nobody in this room who entirely agreed with it. I think that the net benefit has been positive ultimately, and people like it. In the summertime, people are coming from elsewhere, restaurants are opening, there's outdoor seating. If you ask me, it feels pretty good out there. But again, that's just my opinion ultimately on it. But no, we're not building it to attract people from all over the place to drive here. We want a nice restaurant row, hopefully resident service ultimately, and from the parking standpoint, we can do a better job enforcing. I think we acknowledge that fact. We're going to walk away with that. That's a true underlying issue that I think we've had, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Yes. Also, could everybody state their name and what neighborhood they're from?
Melissa Sexton, also. My question is about the park at Colgate Clock, and it's a spectacularly beautiful spot, but the park is not yet finished, and it doesn't seem like it would take a lot of money to finish it, so just wanted to get an update from you.
I just touched on it. That was the Veterans Park that I mentioned in Polish Oak that I just touched on. We're working with the state. It's state-owned. He's in the back over here. But basically, we're working with the state to allow us to take over that property. It has been a better part of a year on ongoing communication. I think we're fairly close. Once we have it, there is money allocated for it. We'll work with the Polish Oak Neighborhood Association in order to get that done. But, we've been working, probably there's documentation on this for the better part of a year of letting the state have us take over the property in order to move it forward.
One of the first things we did as a mayor is to stop the river that had been started by the previous administration. The last river in Jersey City has been more than a quarter century ago. Prices have changed dramatically in the past quarter century. As a result of this, many of us are paying thousands of dollars every year, more than we should be paying, to subsidize people who are not paying their fair share. I remember at one point you told me one concern that you have is about this little old lady who has been living all her life in a townhouse, hardly paying any real estate taxes at all, who cannot afford to pay $15,000, $20,000 a year in real estate taxes. Well, quite frankly, I feel it's very difficult to feel sorry for the little old lady who bought a home for $20,000 25 years ago. This home is now worth $1.5 million, maybe $2 million. She can easily sell it. She can buy a condo for $500,000 and have another $1 million left in the bank. Why should I subsidize her? I don't see any fairness here. I don't see any equity here. To me, this is simply grossly indecent. What do you plan to do about it?
Okay. All right, so this question falls into the bucket again of information and not total picture of information. So let me start by saying it is important to recognize even the questioners. I'm going to talk about kind of your situation specifically because I think it's relevant to understanding when people point this stuff out and they email about it and they post it on the internet, why they're doing it, and it's not always driven at what's the best interest for everybody. And I'm going to tell you a couple different facts. Portofino was a tax abated building, correct? Okay. So Portofino, where he lives, is a tax abated building. Doing that will give him the flexibility to cancel that tax abatement, which pays more money, to ultimately pay less to move into that old lady that he touched on. I'm not wired that way, first of all. So when you all cheer for that sort of thing, it bothers me at my core because you don't know the issue in the entirety, and it's important that you read about it before you go out there and say, let's just clap on this behalf, because it's not really the entire picture. This thing was started under the previous administration. I voted no for it every step of the way. Why did I vote no? Because it is catastrophic for you living in this city. People do revals generally for two reasons, right? Well, generally one reason. When development stops because projects in one area versus projects in another area, the discrepancy hinders progress on development, which ultimately allows you to have a stable tax base, because there's only two ways that your taxes don't go up in it. Your taxes will go up every year like your shopping goes up every year. Why? Because cost of living increases. There's only two ways for one to pay for city assets, city costs. There's only two ways, right? One way is that we find more people to come into Jersey City to pay for it. That's one way. We're paying them. Or number two is ultimately that you all pay more. Those are the only two ways, because every year the cost, if I do nothing, union contracts, healthcare, plows, snow removal goes up every single year. That's the reality of the situation ultimately. So let's take a step back ultimately and talk about kind of the reval. The reval started, right? And you look at the last reval, many people were in this room. It was catastrophic for people. People's taxes went up 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. 4 times. And we're not in a situation today where development has stopped in the city, that we can't grow the tax base ultimately. So what's the sense of urgency in order to do that for you and risk your respective taxes going up 4 times? If you don't believe me, I urge you to go to any other municipality that has done this. You will see there's some winners, no question about it. There are some winners their taxes go down 200, 300, and there are a lot of losers that go up 10,000, 15,000, 18,000. That little lady you mentioned will lose her home. No question about that. She's lived here 50, 60 years. That's for sure. But all of you too will be paying that much more money. Let me tell you a little bit more about this thing. So if you don't believe me on the facts about it. It started 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It was supposed to be delivered. Supposed to be delivered for you, all of you, the year of the election, right before the election. Then miraculously, it got delayed a year. No reason why, it got delayed a year. Let me ask you this question. If it was going to be a good thing to my predecessor, if it was going to be a good thing that you all would say, this is great, this is terrific, don't you think he would have done it before the election? I mean, it's common sense on that stuff. It was delayed till after. Now let me tell you where we are in that, because I know in my core it wasn't the right thing to do. So you had a business administrator who was working for the city, okay, gave out a $5 million contract to the reval company. The business administrator left the city and then subsequently started working for the reval company. Okay? And so we sued. We stopped it on your behalf, so it's not fair to all of you, ultimately, so that you all don't get hurt, ultimately. And we sued saying that the way the contract was given is illegal. I believe in my core. That's where we're going. I am telling you, as sure as I am standing here, it's not only downtown we're protecting, the entire city. Now let me say this. If you think that you are going to be in that bucket of winners, down $200 and $300 potentially, And you're going to say, yeah, this is a good thing. I'm going to put the $200 or $300 in my pocket. It's possible, certainly. I'll be the first to say. But let me ask you this question, okay? Let's say you live in, pick a neighborhood in the city. Let's say you live in Bergen Lafayette, and you think your taxes are going to go down $200 or $300. So you're saying, yay, reval. I read about it on the internet. We should be doing that. That's a good thing. If property taxes go up in, let's say, Hamilton Park, $15,000, right? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to your home value. Your home value goes down dramatically because the buyer has to pay more in taxes. It's kind of common sense. It's basic economics, right? So your taxes go up significantly, your home value goes down dramatically. So your home value in Hamilton Park, shave off $100,000, $200,000 from that price. If I can pick up, or somebody can pick up, a home in Hamilton Park for $100,000, $200,000 cheaper, do you think that that domino effect through the whole city happens? Of course it does. That means the person in Bergen Lafayette gets his house a little cheaper. That means the person in Hilltop gets his house a little cheaper. The person in Country Village gets a little cheaper. So I would argue that yes, you can put $200 in your pocket if you are in that winner category, but you're going to lose home value of thousands of dollars in that. I tell you that the people who are arguing for that are entirely disingenuous. Entirely. They are doing it purely for hatred for me. That's it. But the reality of the situation, but the reality of the situation is that if you look at the facts of this thing, you would be hard pressed to argue, and the history of it, that it's in your best interest. I believe it to my core. You can vote me out in 2 years, and I would say to you the same exact thing. I would go to sleep every night saying I did the right thing for people, 100%. Okay? One question at a time. Go ahead. Yes.
I'm Garrett Carter from Vanderbilt. I have a really simple question.
Thank God.
The bike share program is a great thing. It's great to see people riding bikes. My question for you, though, is when are we going to get some signs downtown that say no bicycle riding on the sidewalk? It's getting really dangerous with people.
We'll add to the list. That's an easy one. We'll do that. No problem. More questions like that, please. Let's go in the back over there. So we're just going to mix it up for a second. Yeah, sir?
Yes, I think you can hear me okay. You spoke very clearly about redevelopment and development, and I appreciate that. But you left out one four-letter word, rent. Okay? With all these new buildings that are going up, I'm really worried about the impact on my rent. You know, I'm in that band that's above the affordable housing criteria and well below what I believe the future rents are going to be. Because I'm certainly going to be attracting the uppies from New York, and, you know, people who are on the way up the income scale. My question is, do you have any plans to enact a rent stabilization? I know rent control is a dirty word or term, but do you have any plans to create some kind of a rent stabilization for people like myself who fall in that hand and need protection? Because in 10 years, you know, I'll be choosing between, you know, chopping the steak and paying my rent. So I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Thanks. So the first, you all heard the question, I assume? Yeah. Basically, dealt with rent stabilization and rent increases overall and affordability, essentially, right? And it's one of the first things I touched on when I came in here, because I think that the biggest risk to Jersey City, if you ask me, the thing that I'm most conscious about is exactly that. That the thing that makes the city special is the diversity, income, background, age, and as you grow as a city, you need to protect it or you're at risk of losing it. So I touched on some of the stuff from the affordable housing standpoint that we've done. We've been looking for the better part of a year and a half on our rent control and rent stabilization. They're two different things, and we are frankly antiquated on it. The challenge as we get into stakeholders, into conversations on this, is that most of the restrictions don't encourage people to invest into their properties to move it forward ultimately. So if there's not a rent ability for an increase to some of those properties ultimately, that is fair from both the landlord and tenant standpoint, and that's a big discrepancy on what it disincentivizes people to renovate their properties, and that's why you have a lot of these neighborhoods that fall into disrepair ultimately with absentee landlords. We're working on it now, you know, I mean, we have a team that is working on it. It's been a struggle, to be perfectly honest with you, on getting that law right. Yeah, I'm happy to include you in what we're doing. I'm happy to include you and
I'll be
get it.
happy to join.
Okay, so we'll get your contact after we leave.
I just want to say, you know, when I say rent stabilization, I don't necessarily mean a lock-in for a year, perhaps in a group of years, 3 years, with an agreed-on percentage. And, you know, I know the landlords and the, you know, big people are going to argue over this, but, you know, I think the only people who can help folks like yourself, you know, is the city government and yourself. So I think there has to be some pushback and force the landlord, or the village, excuse me, I should say landlord, the village, to include, you know, you have affordability percentages. How about stabilization percentage? For some of us who can fall into that category.
Okay, well, let's loop you in after. I'm open to all that stuff. I think it's fair. But don't leave